It's a Blackhawks potpourri as we catch up on all the off-ice stories we haven't had a chance to catch up on over the last few weeks. Join us next on CHGO Blackhawks. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. I'm Jay Zawaski with Mario Tirabassi. It is our first non-postgame show in almost a month, which is crazy to think about.
A while.
And a lot's happened. A lot has happened in that month, including the Blackhawks practicing today. That's where we will start. There's not a ton of news, but there's some, and it's worth paying some attention to. We're going to talk about the World Junior Championships. We're going to talk about Jonathan Toews' potential return. I'm going to yell about and at Jeremy Roenick. There's a lot. There's a lot to get to, but before we get to all of it, do us a favor and smash that like button for us. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube page as well. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that great stuff. So let's start with today's practice. Not a ton to report. The good news, I think, for most people is that Lukas Reichel is back in the line rotation today. He's on the fourth line with Craig Smith and Ryan Donato. So your lines are basically identical with Reichel in for Maroon and then Reichel moving to center. Your D pairs were Kaiser and Jones, Vlasic and Crevier, Allen and Brody, and Kurashev, Maroon, and Martinez all practiced. Martinez practiced in full, but didn't really have...
He was rotating in with Louis Crevier.
Yeah, there's not much of an update from Anders, though. He's like, we'll see.
You're not going to get any updates, really, from Anders.
But he does look very close.
Yeah, I mean...
There was no special jersey. He was fully participating.
This is the second time, at least the second time, that he's fully participated in a practice in the last week. So... he was out there for the Winter Classic practice. Like I would venture a guess that it's not too much time before he's back, which coincides with Connor Murphy missing another day of practice today with a groin injury. He's been out since the Winter Classic, which he didn't practice but he played in. So again, there are things that need to. Or did he play in the Winter Classic? Yeah, he did. It's. We'll see with him. Again, he's under evaluation.
He said reevaluated today, but I think what Anders was saying was just we're watching it. We're seeing how it reacts and those sort of things.
And as Charlie the Big Guy pointed out, this is about the time last year where Connor Murphy started to kind of have more maintenance days and then eventually was done for the rest of the year by the end of the season. It was about this time. Yeah.
I don't foresee that, but
hopefully not.
We'll ask Luke Richardson how long Murphy's out, and he'll say 4 weeks. And then we'll just see what happens from there. So a little bit of a side story, and I know people have kind of moved on from Philip Kurashev, and it's understandable. He's not been good this year, but Anders Sorensen was asked today at practice what Kurashev can do to get back on the ice in the lineup.
Him and I had some conversations what he needs to do, and I'll kind of keep it between us, right? And then it's just an opportunity to get back in here, right? I think it's one of those things that we feel like we have better options at this day, but it changes quick, right? So just be ready. He had a good practice today, I thought.
With his contract up after this year and we're at the halfway point, it seems like kind of an important second half for him to show more than he has in the first half. What do you say? That's fair to say.
For himself, yeah, for sure, yeah.
I like how uninterested Anders is in the contract situation. Yeah, that's tough.
I mean, it's not his.
That's a bummer, man.
It's not his thing to deal with contracts, but I think with the Kurashev thing, it really just kind of sounds like. I mean, there's only so much a player can do to say, like, I'm improving when it's just through practice. Like, there's no real way for him to kind of, like, get subbed into a game and be like, hey, I only played 7 minutes in the second period. Like, that would be a fascinating thing in hockey if you could sub in a player midway through a game. But there's no real way to do that. You could send him to Rockford at this point, but I feel like that's even more of a, like, demotion kind of in that respect, rather than being like, just wait for your opportunity to get back in the lineup. But that's the thing with this group so far, is that it's been sporadic where guys will have an opportunity to get back into a lineup, even though there have been times where other players and veteran players have kind of looked like they need to sit and let's get this other guy an opportunity, and that hasn't really happened. So you get Reichel back in after he was out for 2 games in place of Pat Maroon. Fine. Kurashev, yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of times these things have a way of working themselves out, whether it's injuries or not. You don't hope for that, but sometimes that's the nature of the game. But Kurashev just kind of has to keep plugging along and hope for the next opportunity to get in and take advantage of it.
It's tough for him because not only are Pat Maroon and Craig Smith still on a roster, but then you call up Nazar and you call up Doc, and those guys have obviously leapfrogged you in the organization's eyes.
I think so.
So they're kind of running out of spots for Philip Kurashev. And I was talking to the very handsome Charlie Romeliotis during practice today, and he basically said, like, he just doesn't have a place to be right now, and there's so many better options than Kurashev at this point. And yeah, he had 54 points last year. Many people give credit to Connor Bedard, and I think it's hard for me to say, well, yeah, that guy fluked into 54 points, but it kind of feels that way because we've got a big mountain of evidence that he's not a guy who can score at this level, and then a little outlier of that 54-point season.
Yeah, and I think where you kind of hold on to that, like, no, like, he can get back to that pace, is that, like, when Bedard was out, Kurashev did step up and was kind of leading the team offensively at that point. But even though he was doing that, the team offensively at that point was really bad. And they were also in a situation last year with the roster where it was like, well, who else is going to do it? Jason Dickinson scored 20 goals on that team last year.
This is my theory, someone has to score.
And he has 12 points this year.
Right.
So it's different situations. I think the way that this season has gone, the opportunities that Kurashev has gotten, I think what we saw leading up to last year and what we've seen this year is more of who he is. And I know that we kind of made those same claims with Lukas Reichel, and it's kind of swung the other way a little bit with Reichel, with the way that he's played this year. But it's still, like, there's still a lot to kind of figure out with him, given
he's still not producing points.
Who he's going to play with. Yeah, and that's the thing, is, like, he's had a good stretch this season, but he hasn't. The production hasn't been there consistently, even though the effort night in and night out, for the most part, is improved from last year.
Well, Nick Foligno met the media today after practice, and that was a lot of the stuff he talked about was identity and finding out who you are. He talked about it as players, talked about it as a team. Good stuff from the captain, Nick Foligno, here.
Coming up on the midpoint of the season, what should be the focus of the team in this second half? Should it be development, team building, something else?
I mean, you're going to get different answers from probably different people within the organization, right? Like, my focus is to win hockey games. That's what I'm here to do and help do. But I think the biggest thing is we haven't really nailed down an identity, right? I mean, that's probably the biggest issue facing our team. It's probably the reason why our record is the way it is. We played some spurts where we've had an identity, but we haven't sustained it. So, to me, that's probably the most important part of where we're trying to go and build this. And, we've talked a lot, right? We've said a lot of things and haven't really followed through on doing them consistently enough. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is walking the walk now, right? Like in what we're asking for as a team of being a hard forechecking, tenacious style of hockey that people are proud of, that we're proud of, that every night you're going to have to play a hard game against us. And we haven't done that enough. So that's on every guy in here, myself included, to get to that identity. And if we don't do that, then it's going to be the same as it was the first half, right, where it's inconsistent and you have moments where you're like, oh, is it coming? Or instead of just sustaining it and building that foundation from the bottom up.
What is the roadblock to that?
I think it's in the mind. I think it's in the mind and in the understanding of what it takes to win here, right? And that's the hardest thing is when you're in the position that we're probably in, every team comes in here thinking they're going to have a chance to beat you, right? That's the reality of when you're in the bottom tier of the league. So you have to fight that by playing such a tenacious, hard style, and it's not easy to do, right? The mindset over a team is sometimes the biggest hurdle. And there's reasons why some teams toil in the bottom of the league for a while, and I don't want to be that team. But in order to get out of it, you have to be so tenacious on your mindset and how you prepare every game and how you fight every game to get out of it. And I think we just haven't done that enough. There's been moments where we're like, and I think we take a breath, where we've had that 3-game winning streak and then we took a breath. And it's like, well, no, like we're still not out of the bottom of the league. We're still not anywhere near being respected right now. So we have to earn it every single time we step on the ice, and I think that's the big difference.
Seth said that you guys as leaders had a meeting or a kind of a serious conversation about what the identity of this team is. So what was talked about with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to find a way to sustain that, right? And so we talked about what it is that we really value and what's going to make a difference and allow us to have the non-negotiables of what it is that's going to be the brand of hockey that we're going to be. And I think we talked about just being a relentless team, a forechecking team, a heavy team, and we need guys to understand. It's not about like running around and fighting or hitting. It's about just when you're on a one-on-one battle, it's being over the puck. It's not allowing the other team to win it. And if you have a chance to get it in, it's getting in. So that guy can change if they're tired and they're not coming back on a tired defense or on a tired line. And there's so many components that go into it. But I think that's really where we have to hammer down and hold each other accountable to that. So, it's not earth-shattering stuff. It's just stuff that when you are in the position we're in, it doesn't come as consistent as when you have a culture and a foundation that's been doing it for so long.
I think that Anders mentioned something about like shifts off. Do you see guys like taking the shift off to try to, like, because they're fatigued or whatever it is?
I think the first thing is when you're tired, your brain shuts down, right? So I think when you're high energy and you're playing the right way and your shift lengths are short, it's amazing how your game just comes to you because you're thinking clearly. You're not overextended. You're not just trying to get out of the shift. You're actually trying to make a play to make something happen in the shift. And too many times we get hemmed in or we don't get a puck all the way in, and now they're turning. I mean, we do it to teams when they don't get the puck all the way in, we're coming. And so it's no different for our team. And now you have pressure. Now they're tired. Now they turn it over again. So we just seem to get caught in that hamster wheel a little bit. And that's what he's probably talking about, is that it hurts the team. And it's not shifts off. Every guy's trying in here. That's one thing I'll say. There's nobody that's not trying. And that's the hardest part. But it's frustrating when you're not playing to the identity that you need to play to collectively as a group.
Nick, I know you were saying similar things you and Seth at the end of the last season, kind of the exit interviews. Do you feel like, you're banging your head against the wall to get this team to turn this corner culturally?
I think when you care and you really want to help get this team back to where you expect it to go and you take pride, and there's a lot of guys that take pride in this, but I think, Jonesy's a guy that really wears it because when he got here, things didn't go as planned, and he wants to see this team get back to, listen, when you've tasted what playoff hockey's like, what winning hockey's like, that's all you want to do is get back to that. So that's what you hope to help, attain here. But the big thing in this room is we're fighting against, understanding how hard it is when you're in the situation we're in. I think that's what we were talking about last year. It doesn't just flip a switch. And I'm sure it's frustrating for the fan base because it's frustrating. And whatever they feel, it's 1,000 times worse for us. We are the ones going out there. We know we want to put a great product on the ice, and it's not going to be this perfect, climb. It's going to have these peaks and valleys. And right now we're obviously in a little bit of a valley, but I think the greatest picture is just you got to hold on to hope, and I think that's where we have to get back to, is like understanding that this isn't going to be just an easy shot back up to the Stanley Cup contenders that we want to be. It takes time, it takes work, it takes a lot of effort and discipline, and that's where we're lacking. We're not giving the discipline required, I think, consistently enough to get ourselves into a position where we're playing consistent hockey and consistently good hockey. And I think that's where you get a little frustrated because you know it's there, you know it's in the group. But it just takes a little bit more from every guy. And if we can do that as a group and we can come together, it's amazing how easy the game starts to feel. Because right now, obviously, it doesn't feel as easy, right? Like but it's because everyone's a little bit off. We're not on the same page quite as frequent as we need to be. And that's, like I said, it takes us as leaders to lead the way and for guys to listen and for the game plan to be what it needs to be. But if you don't have that identity solidly instilled, you're going to get that. But the big thing is, we're trying in here, and there's a really proud group, and we're going to sort this out. It's easy to pile it on when things aren't going well, but I think we're a group that takes a lot of pride, and when we do turn it around, we'll be able to look back and say, yeah, we went through that, but here we are now.
That is Blackhawks captain Nick Foligno. Lots of good stuff in there. We got to hit the break zone. Back with more in a moment on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
When you think hot wings, cold beer, and sports,
yes,
that
the trifecta.
That trio put together, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, Hooters. What is a better way than watching your favorite teams with a cold beer and a plate of delicious, saucy wings at Hooters? I say nothing is better than that, especially with the state of our Chicago sports teams right now.
Yeah.
Watching games at Hooters might just make it a little bit more bearable. See what I did there? Bearable.
More hawkable.
How does chicken tender tacos sound, Jay?
Amazing.
Well, Hooters has them now. It's a new special available. Also, for you wing connoisseurs out there, a new mango habanero wing sauce.
Tropical.
Can't wait to try that one out. And cannot forget about the Hooters $6 legendary margaritas available all day, every day. Sign me up. Cheer on your favorite teams from any of the 11 Chicagoland's Hooters locations. You can even order Hooters online for pickup or delivery. Check them out at originalhooters.com.
And if you drop your Hooters wings on your floors and there's wing sauce all over them, you know who to call.
Could stain.
It's our friends at Empire Today, where you get shop at home convenience, the right products for your needs, not the wrong. You don't want to order floors and get a ceiling. That would be awful. That won't happen to you with Empire. Quick and professional installation and a low price guarantee. I'm an idiot.
Hey, when that happens.
Shopping for this is a ceiling. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in ceilings yesterday. No, flooring is all that Empire Today does.
That's probably where the mix-up happens.
I guess. They live and breathe flooring. And really, who doesn't? So you can be confident that you're getting honest, upfront advice. And if you're not 100% sure, you can open up that virtual floor designer, take a picture of the room where you need your new floors, where you dropped all your wings, and just plug in different looks, different floors, and see exactly how it's going to look so you feel confident in this major purchase you're about to make. Schedule yourself a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when they use promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
Make sure you get those floors.
Yeah, floors, not ceilings. I got a $5 super chat from our pal Chris P. He says, I know it's early. However, do you think it's a good option for the Hawks to draft? Who do you think, is a good option for the Hawks to draft with the Leafs first round pick? I'm excited for what's to come. Chris, you should be excited for what's to come. And Thursday, this is a good chance to plug this. We're going to talk to Stephen Ellis, who's all over the World Juniors, all over the prospects. He'll be on 2:30 on Thursday, and we will begin in earnest looking ahead to the NHL entry draft, because guess what? They don't have much to look forward to these days.
Yeah. I reaching out to Stephen, I kind of gave him a heads up of like, here's who we'd like to talk about, and kind of topics we want to touch. And I basically said, feel free to go in depth on all these guys, because we're at a point where talking about almost anyone that's not on the NHL roster is probably a little bit more fun. So yeah, going to be good to talk with Steven. He was covering the World Juniors for Daily Faceoff.
Yep.
We talked to him prior to the NHL draft back in, I think we talked to him in May. It was. So
good stuff.
Love having him on. He's got great insight. Going to be great to talk to him. Looking at where the Blackhawks right now, currently where that pick would be in the late 20s, end of the first round. So this, we've seen Kyle Davidson get aggressive with draft picks before. Last year, he moved back into the first round for a third pick to get Marek Vanacker. He packaged picks to move up from 20 to 18 to get Sasha Boisvert. So, maybe they use this pick where it is. Maybe they use it as a trade piece to move up or anything like that. A name that I find interesting in this draft that started pretty high in the preseason rankings in October that has kind of fallen down, at least in the elite prospects rankings, is Ivan Ryabkin. He was playing in Russia to begin this season. He was playing over in the MHL, a goal and 12 points in 15 games. He's a forward. He plays primarily center. What was interesting was in the last 2 weeks, I want to say, he came over from Russia and is now playing with the Muskegon Lumberjacks in the USHL, 3 goals in his first 2 games there. So I know whenever you bring up Russian prospects, if they're not a guy that's going to go in the top 5, there's always the roll of the dice, like,
Yes.
oh, will they ever play in North America? Such and such from there. He's already in North America now. He's already in the USHL, so I think that kind of takes that out of the
100%.
equation.
Yeah.
He's a guy that, again, like the movement up and down the rankings, it's going to continue as the seasons go on, but he's someone that caught my eye early on in looking at the 2025 draft class that I was like, oh, with that second first round pick, where it might be a guy. And now that it kind of lines up that, at least through elite prospects' eyes, who they have a lot of eyes on prospects.
Yeah, that's a good plan for them.
They have him in that back end of that first
business
round.
model.
And where the Leafs are right now, that pick is where that would land. So that's a name that I've kind of been focusing on.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of it with Steven on Thursday, and yeah, I'm ready now to be. Honestly, like the World Juniors is kind of where I start to turn my attention towards prospects and start because you hear the names, but it's like who's got time to follow really closely what all these guys are doing.
Right. If
the
it's
World
not
Juniors is kind of my intro point to now we'll start thinking about prospects.
Yeah.
Start watching guys with like a scouting eye, and we got a really great chance to do that watching the USA win gold. That was so fun, man. And that
was awesome. That was an awesome game.
The gold medal game was great. And I just thought the whole tournament was good.
Yeah.
And it's, it's really funny to see. And I'm not one who, I have no hatred in my heart towards Canada. Soon to be our 51st state. If you listen to some people, it's just, it's fun when we're the place that invented and we own hockey gets knocked down a peg. It's always enjoyable.
Yeah. I mean, not only the loss to Latvia, but also not medaling in back-to-back tournaments, and it's fascinating, and to see the reaction across the board to Canada not being in that position is it's nauseating for some when you're seeing the hate that's thrown at the kids who were playing in the tournament, but it also like. You just look at the decisions that Hockey Canada made with their coaching decisions and the lineup decisions and who they took to the tournament and who they left behind. It's just like, oof, like you probably could have seen this coming if you're not icing the best lineup possible with the best players possible. So yeah, I mean that's Canada's problem. But USA hockey is in a prime position. Probably the strongest it's ever been. And talked to had a chance to talk to Frank Nazar today following practice. Talk a little bit about the World Juniors and his experience last year, and kind of what it means to him to be part of the first ever USA group to go back-to-back gold medals at the World Juniors. He was part of it last year, winning with him, Oliver Moore, Sam Renzel, and Gavin Hayes were part of the gold medal group last year. Oliver Moore part of the gold medal group again this year. So it's awesome. It's awesome to see that, and you get an eye for some of the guys who are going to be in the 2025 class that we're playing, and you also get to see some of the guys that the Blackhawks did pick. Yuri Felchman too got a bronze medal with Czechia, so that was fun to see. He was a depth contributor for that team, so it's good stuff. It's good stuff. The prospect system. We're going to start diving into it a little bit more as this back half of this season goes on. But that's I think where we're gonna start to find a little bit more fun and joy out of this season is diving into those guys.
Well, look, I think if you're looking for the things that have been joyful at the NHL level this year, it has been the emergence of prospects, right? Like it's Nazar coming up, and it's Doc coming up, and it's Korchinski looking really good in his brief call up, and like all these young guys that you're projecting out a few years, none of them have the arrow pointed down. It might not be as high as you'd think it would be at this point. Like I think we all thought
90 degree.
Right. We all thought Frank Nazar would probably have a few more points right now than he has, but the chances have been there. You know, the eye test, he's passing it every night. Same with Colton Dock. So yeah, the stats haven't been there, but the Hawks have been playing like ass basically for the last, 2 weeks. So it's hard to really, well, longer than that, but specifically the last 2 weeks. So yeah, but Oliver Moore, I know it was a big topic of conversation. He was a big part of what Team USA did. Didn't light up the score sheet by any means for a team that was scoring a lot in the tournament. I think a lot of people have looked at that and said, like, we'll see. Oliver Moore, not a good pick. The guy can't score. He's not a contributor to the World Juniors. If you watch the games, he was a very large factor. The speed is evident, and it's not just speed without purpose like we've seen a couple guys on the Hawks the last few years.
Yeah.
Like he is a tougher in terms of puck retrieval, board battles. He's a tougher, more physical player than I realized before watching this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and he's part of that group of what a lot of people are saying. It's like, oh, like undersized center with Bedard, Nazar, and himself, but he's 6 foot. He's pushing close to 190, 200 pounds. So I'm not going to say he's undersized. I think that's a pretty solid sized guy to get into the NHL, especially before being fully like physically developed.
But we had 5 points in 7 games.
Yeah, 5 points.
Like he was doing nothing.
Points in 7 games. He started the tournament as the third line center. He moved up to the second line on the left wing. He was playing with Minnesota teammate Brody Zemer on that line. They were really effective in being a forechecking group that also was able to contribute a little bit of offensive pop as well. He was playing with Danny Nelson. Again, it's it's so funny the people who throughout the World Juniors tournament were expressing concerns over Oliver Moore and Blackhawks might not have the guy that they thought they did. It's a real shame that the Blackhawks have one of the top 6 forwards that are under 20 years old that are American. Right. It's a real shame that they have one of those guys.
And you also saw a lot of what Team USA was doing was getting guys with familiarity playing together. And that was kind of more of the mindset of like, we're not going to take the 3 best, the second 3 best, the third 3 best. It's, hey, who's played with each other the most? How can, as our old pal Greg always used to say, like, you're building a roster, not a team, or vice versa, building a team, not a roster.
In those situations, like that's a big thing, especially in the junior tournaments where you have, the national team development program, where a lot of these guys just build up that familiarity with each other. The top line. That's the top line at Boston College with Perreault, Leonard, and Higgins. Like, there's no reason to split that up, and obviously it worked out really well for Team USA. And then you had Oliver Moore and Zemer are playing together. Danny Nelson was with that group, and all these guys. And talked about it with Nazar too. Like all these guys, for the most part, came up through the development team program. So you're not just piecing together random players who are just getting to know each other through this short 2-week tournament. These are guys that have put in years together through development programs and have played with and against each other for a long time. So when you look at the construction of teams for the U.S. program, a lot of those guys that get to the World Juniors, the U20 World Juniors, a lot of those guys came through the development program, and a lot of them played in college. Like it's rare that you see the guys that play in the CHL and in Canada make the team. Like AJ Spellacy was invited to camp but was cut. He's going to be an option for them next year. And then vice versa in Canada, they basically, unless you're Cale Makar, like they very rarely take Canadian players who are playing in college. They take all the guys from the CHL because they want it to kind of showcase, like, no, Canadian juniors is the prospect development paradise. Like that's where it's at. But it's interesting now how many players are, electing to go play in college now in the U.S. And with the CHL NCAA transfer rule and all that stuff, that's a whole different discussion. But it's interesting to see how that all pieces together. But I think with Oliver Moore, he's got 17 points through 20 games at Minnesota this year. He had a bit of a slow start, but he's been picking up recently, especially going into the tournament. His play and his production has picked up. And one thing I will say for a lot of people when they're looking at prospects is don't just go by points.
Right.
Like points are great, but they don't tell the entire story. And Moore is a prime example of that because he was not asked to be the top scorer for USA. He was asked to play a role, and he did it very well.
Yeah, absolutely. But you mentioned Spellacy. I know we got to hit the break zone, Sarah. We'll get there in like 30 seconds. But that's a guy who a lot of people watched this camp and wanted to make the team.
And he was one of the last cuts.
Right.
So, like, I think he's got a great chance for next year's tournament. And he's another one of those guys that is like, he will be asked to play a role. So if he, plays for Team USA next year and they play into the medal round and in 7 games he has 1 assist, don't call him a bust because his game is probably not going to be put up points for us.
Right. Okay, we got to hit the break zone. Back with more in a moment on CHGO Blackhawks. And if you're looking for the perfect way to elevate your day, you can do it at Vera Life Dispensary. They've got everything you need, from premium cannabis products to expert advice. With 8 convenient locations across Illinois, discovering your perfect experience has never been easier. They've got an award-winning lineup of Matter products. Matter offers a curated line of premium flower strains and infused gummies crafted to deliver consistent quality and distinctive effects for every preferences. How about Magnitude? Their distillate vapes deliver power in every pull, combining high potency and smooth, flavorful hits for an elevated experience. All of these great products and more can be found at any one of the 8 Vera Life locations across Illinois, or you can browse and order ahead at veralife.com. And if you place your order online, you can still redeem that code CHGO25 at pickup to receive the discount. So mention that code CHGO25 in store and you'll receive 25% off one of these amazing products today at Vera Life. Go do it. Vera Life is awesome.
And with all the money you save at Vera Life, you can turn those dollars into tickets with our friends at Game Time. With Game Time Picks, this new feature that they have, it makes getting tickets to any event that you want to go to even easier because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find your best value. Game Time Picks curation does it for you for any event that you want to go to, whether it's sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, etc., etc., etc. Anything that you want your butt in a seat for, Game Time and Game Time Picks will help you out. And they have the all-in pricing tool, which allows you to see your total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. The views from your seats function, so if they're going to a show or a sporting event in an arena or theater that you've never been to, and you want to know what the view looks like, with Game Time, you can see the view from your seat and say, hey, this is obstructed, or hey, this is not the right angle that I want, and make sure that you're paying good money for those seats, and you're going to get a good view. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right. We want to start with Jonathan Toews or Jeremy Roenick. Where do we want to go first? What's going to need more? I think Roenick's going to need more time.
Okay.
So let's save him for last.
Oh, okay. Sure.
I know Holly is chomping at the bit for us to yell at Roenick. We're going to yell at Roenick, I promise you. But Jonathan Toews, if you missed it, I'm sure you haven't because you're watching this show. But Jonathan Toews in the GQ article sort of teased the fact that, you never know. Might be ready to come back. Yeah. You never know what might happen. And then last week, actually 5 days ago, Frank Saravalli had an update on Jonathan Toews on NHL Coast to Coast, basically saying that there are several teams interested. Jonathan Toews has begun skating. To what level of intensity, we don't know yet. But he mentioned specifically Toronto, Winnipeg, and Colorado. Now, a caveat, if getting ahead of myself, if Toews is going to play for an NHL team in these playoffs, he has to be on a roster by March 7th. So it feels like a lot of time, but
It's not really.
It's not that much time for I keep doing that, for Jonathan Toews to
2 months.
get back on the ice, prove he's ready, get an NHL contract, and get into some games. It would be really impressive. If anyone can do it, it's him. Selfishly, I don't want to see him in anyone else's jersey ever again.
Yeah, I mean, it would be weird. We've done this with Duncan Keith. We've done it with Patrick Kane twice. It would be really weird to see him come back in a different uniform. I think of the teams mentioned, even though it would be in division, I feel like so often it was, well, Jonathan Toews is going to go and play in Winnipeg because it's his hometown.
That's where he's from. You have to do that.
That also feels like it might be the easiest to stomach because it makes sense. It's Winnipeg, even though it's in division. Like do you really? I don't really look at the Jets.
It doesn't matter right now.
Yeah, I don't. You don't look at the Jets with like any animosity. I know the other teams mentioned by Saravalli were Colorado and Toronto.
You'd have to have a J Toews and a D Toews on.
That
Colorado.
would, yeah. That would be
it's confusing.
Something for their stitch work. Toronto, with either team, it really does make. Toews coming back, and he's going to basically probably garner $1 million prorated.
I would imagine
minimum.
so.
Who knows? So you're not getting Jonathan Toews with the he's going to make $10 million or anything like that. Like he's nowhere near that. Obviously,
no.
So those cash-strapped teams are looking at him like, we might have a percentage of Jonathan Toews.
Yeah, if it's 75% of Jonathan
league
Toews,
minimum, yeah, like that's
but the
not
question
a bad option.
is it 75% of 2010, 2013, 2015 Jonathan Toews,
think
or 75% of 2020, 21 Jonathan Toews? Because that's a very, very different picture.
Right.
Now, he is saying he feels better than ever. He's finally cured of all of his ailments, and I'm so happy that he's finally feeling good and feeling normal. But he hasn't played in so long. How do you just like ramp it up and then start going to play for a contender? That's very difficult. And then who knows how, once he gets back into the grind of practice, travel, sleep schedules, those sort of things. And are there things that he's doing that the league might frown upon? Maybe there's supplements he's taking that the league doesn't necessarily approve. Like that's an aspect too.
Part of the GQ interview was kind of going into some of those details about what he's gone through the different treatments and different I'll just call them treatments, and also what he was doing while he was still playing to kind of get through what he was dealing with. He kind of didn't really admit in detail, but kind of said like, yeah, he was kind of doing some things that you would call borderline okay. With the league. So, I think being at that point, that would be also a consideration. And he's 37. He'd be 37 by the end of the season in April. A good stat here pointed out by Chris Johnston in The Athletic is that there's only 20 skaters older than Toews right now that are currently active in the NHL. None of them have had a 2-year hiatus from the game and have come back to play at the level that they're currently playing at.
Has anyone ever done that?
Mario Lemieux is really he's the only one that I can think of.
But Lemieux was cut down in his prime because of cancer.
Right. Well, he
came back with still some decent years.
When he played with Sidney Crosby, he had to be almost 40. Right?
Yeah, I'm going to go.
And
he
wasn't, generational Mario Lemieux at that time, but he was still pretty serviceable for those Penguins teams when Sidney Crosby first jumped into the league.
So he missed from 97, 98 to he missed that year. and that was back in 2000, 2001. So he missed his years 32,
Basically
33,
3 years.
34.
Yeah.
And yeah, came back with Crosby. What was that? 03, 04? No,
That would
02,
have
03.
been, no, with Crosby would have been 05, 06.
Oh, right. So he
played
was 40
Yeah.
and played 26 games and had a bad season, only 22 points.
Yeah, tough.
Jesus.
Tough. So yeah,
The corpse of Mario Lemieux had almost a point per
almost
game.
a point per game, right? And listening to the guys at the Steve Dangle podcast, they were also talking about this, and they brought up recent players that have gone through time off and that have tried to come back. Peter Holland, Ice Hogs legend, Cody Hodgson, and Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel never got into a game.
No.
Trying to come back at when he was skating with Vancouver. Cody Hodgson and Peter Holland, they got to the AHL, but never to the NHL. So, you I'd say Toews is maybe still steps ahead of those guys in that process.
He's also just a better player than all of them.
Yeah, but it is something to be said for the time off, the time away from the game, and then to jump back into it at the age that he's at with what he's gone through physically, which if you read the GQ article, doesn't sound fun whatsoever.
You know what sounds less fun?
What?
The treatments.
Well,
just nonstop vomiting, and
that's part of it. Yeah,
the other part.
There's a lot of
he opted for norovirus.
Basically, yeah.
It's both ends all day.
A lot of purging your system, and he talked about painful massages and just a lot of I don't want to say alternative, but like holistic and more alternative ways of going about it. But it worked for him. But yeah, like you said, like could he keep that up? I don't know. And I think it seems like he would be, if he's really all in on this comeback effort. It seems like what I would imagine would be best for him is get to conditioning now, get into a rhythm, take the off season, and start fresh next year. But if he's got a team that's interested and he feels like he can fast track his way into the NHL before March 7th,
look, if you are to sign him and it doesn't work out, you throw him on long-term injured reserve, and it's just money. It's just money lost, right?
Right.
So I could see why a team is looking at it that way, as like, you know what? It's Jonathan Toews.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what he is capable of. And now, again, reading the GQ story, he's been feeling this way since 2009. And he's been one of the best players in the game dealing with this problem. The thing for me, though, and you just sort of mentioned, like, the syndrome he has starts with the word chronic, which means it doesn't really go away.
Right.
So does he need to have these treatments constantly to stay in the shape he's in? And I don't know if he even knows the answer to that yet. I think that's what he's trying to find out is, okay,
right,
I'm going to start my off-season routine now, and let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And if after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, I start feeling like ass again, then I know I've gotten my answer. It's time to look for the next phase of my career, be it behind a bench, be it in a front office, be it in a broadcast booth, whatever it might be. I don't think Jonathan Toews is leaving hockey. I think he just needs to get an answer of what his body is ready for hockey-wise. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder, too, if this comes back and he's not able to maintain a travel schedule or a rest schedule, he might have to cross coaching off the list, too, in terms of 82 games of travel.
Yeah.
Practicing every other day, morning skates, all that. I think if he wants to get back in the game, and we're way ahead of ourselves, but probably the easiest path for him health-wise, if this does indeed continue for him, would be in a front office. Yeah. And I saw Windy City Hockey mentioned earlier his how he idolized Joe Sakic.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I don't know what Jonathan Toews knows about managing a hockey team. I have no idea.
Well,
and I know
the game,
there's people that just want to hire him sight unseen and give him a job. I don't know if I'm there yet, but you could give him the Brian Campbell path of, hey, come, start in scouting,
and
work your way up, be an advisor, and then we'll see. Because I think someday someone's going to hire Brian Campbell
maybe
to be a GM. Maybe it's the Hawks, maybe it's someone else, but that's the path he's on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not impossible. I just don't want to just say, well, you're Jonathan Toews, so here is a job with the Blackhawks just because.
Yeah,
as long as it's not like I'm saying don't just give him the GM or coach.
Right.
If you want to have him as a scout or
Without
an
having
advisor,
done it,
cool.
Yeah.
But no major decision-making roles right away.
Well, he played in the NHL, so he's automatically ahead of anybody
automatically
else.
a great GM.
Yeah.
Like Chris Drury.
Yeah. Well, me and Charlie and Ben Pope, today, as we were passing the hour that we were sitting in the locker room, waiting for the Blackhawks practice to be officially over, we figured out the path forward for the Blackhawks. Jonathan Toews is player coach.
Oh, I like that.
Nick Foligno and Jason Dickinson are in front office roles.
Okay.
Brent Seabrook is an assistant coach.
Okay.
Duncan Keith is the strength and conditioning coordinator.
Got it.
And Patrick Kane retires and becomes GM.
I like that.
And then
we have nothing for Patrick Sharp.
Well, we talked about Patrick Sharp. He's more or less just kind of the face of the front office. Yeah,
sure.
He's the face of the front office. He's in that nice advisory role. He'll take pictures and shake hands and kiss babies and all that.
Shake babies and kiss hands.
Either way, and then you'll have a roster full of strictly only draft picks, and then you plan the parade.
That's my favorite. The graphics of only draft picks. All 12 forwards, all 6 defense, both goalies. And yet people want to fire Kyle Davidson, even though that's the inevitable lineup 3 years from now.
But yeah, I think for Toews, the comeback road is going to be a challenging one. But he's a guy that is just like, how do you not root for him to do it? If he has it in his mindset to, want this to happen, want to kind of try and go out on your own terms, I think is a big thing for anybody really. But especially like professional athletes, that's the way that they want their careers to be over, is to be like, I'm the one that says I'm done.
Yeah.
Not anything out of my control. Like, so if he has that in him, wants to give it a shot, by all means, go for it.
All right. We all love Jonathan Toews. Let's take Jeremy Roenick to the woodshed. Before we do that, please hit that like button for us. We'd appreciate that. Sarah pointing out in the chat, about 200 people watching, 60 some likes. Come on, be better. You want the Hawks to put the puck in the net? Stop hitting the post. Hit the like button. Let's go. We're ready for that. All right, here's the thing. I'm just going to read the quotes. This is on his podcast there. What's it called again?
Stripes and Snipes?
Stripes and Snipes or something
Tim
like
Peel
that.
And Jeremy Roenick?
Yeah. So here's Roenick talking about his Winter Classic experience. All the players came up to me, Chelios, and Savard except one. That was Connor Bedard. If we don't have that respect to go up and fist bump to say congratulations, how can you do it with your own teammates? I'm not ripping on him in terms of his personality or anything like that. If he's going to be the captain of this team, there's a lot of things he has to learn, has to think about in terms of being that leader, being that captain, and unfortunately, he dropped the ball. Okay.
Ooh, laptop's closed.
When Jeremy Roenick was welcomed back to the organization,
Recently.
honored with his night, we said, the door is open for this man to have his number retired by the Blackhawks. Lucas Reichel was told in no uncertain terms, hey, man, you should probably change your number soon.
Mm-hmm.
And he did, to 73, which was somehow available. We said, can Jeremy Roenick stay out of his own way long enough to get his number in the rafters? Can he go a year without saying something completely stupid and selfish and childish? And he lasted a month. What was the date of the Jeremy Roenick jersey, or the whatever day that was? It was December something.
That was this month.
No, it wasn't this month.
Yeah, it was this month.
It was January
or December. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was December something.
I don't know what day it is. It was recently.
Regardless, he didn't last
2 weeks. It was basically 2 weeks
without saying something dumb and selfish and 100% Jeremy Roenick. And I have said on this show, I've written it in my book, I've written it in things I've written for several different outlets. Jeremy Roenick was my all-time favorite hockey player. He's the reason I love hockey. Jeremy, shut up. Stop making it about you. Connor Bedard was about to play a hockey game. I'm sorry he's not interested in fist bumping a guy. He wasn't even born when you played.
Fair.
I'm sorry he didn't kiss the ring of Jeremy Roenick before a game. He's trying to play. He's trying to win. Who cares? You just had The entire city, the entire organization, everyone come out and cheer for you and sing your praises and talk about how great you are. Everyone praised your Hall of Fame speech, and one player doesn't fist bump him, and he goes on his 75th ranked podcast to complain about it and whine about it like a baby. Dude, you just slammed the door on your own fingers. Because if I'm Jamie Faulkner or Danny Wirtz, I'm like, that's it. We gave him a chance. We opened the door for him to come in and get his number retired. Maybe in the 100th season, maybe next year, whatever it might be. And he blew it just as everybody knew he would. Everyone knew he was going to do something like this. And for me, a guy who grew up loving Jeremy Roenick, it breaks my heart that he did that, because I was waiting for that number to go up there, because it deserves to be up there for hockey reasons. But for the crap he keeps doing to himself and to others, it's not going to happen probably. It is ridiculous. It is frustrating. It is the most predictable thing in the world from Jeremy Roenick. Just keep it to yourself, or handle it with Connor and say, hey, man, you know what? I wanted to give you a fist bump and I didn't. Is everything cool with us? And Connor would say, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even, the truth is, it probably didn't even cross his mind because he was focused on a game or practice or whatever the situation was. He's not. If Connor Bedard is getting ready for a game or practice and he goes, okay, skates, helmet, pad, stick, I got to make sure I fist bump the legend too. Screw that. He's thinking about hockey. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. Yep. It is so aggravating and predictable that my favorite player of all time screwed himself again with his big mouth. Dude, stop, please.
And I feel like, and we didn't have the broadcast of the game in front of us while we were covering the Winter Classic. So I'm looking at it right now, and I'm not going to see the whole thing. But Roenick, Savard, and Chelios go out for the ceremonial puck drop, and they got the red carpet and everything. My guess is that it's moments before the Winter Classic starts. It's a big moment. There was this whole lead up to it and everything. Memory's not serving me correctly, but I think Bedard started the game, so he might have just been going out to the ice. It might have. I think it's fair to say that young Connor Bedard in that moment is probably thinking, all right, let's get to this game. Let's start it. He's probably even just like, I'm done with all this like pregame stuff. I'd love to just start this game.
As we were working, we didn't get to see the broadcast. And again, I'm a little fuzzy on when exactly this diss from Connor Bedard happened. But
I would think
is that what he's talking about, before the ceremonial puck drop?
I'm think it's either before or after is my thought. Is either getting onto or leaving the ice.
For those who watched it on TV, because we didn't, we were there. Wasn't Connor Bedard interviewed before the game too?
I'd imagine he was.
So couldn't that have been a factor too?
He might have been.
By
somewhere
the way, it
else.
Doesn't matter if 11 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 2 goalies fist bumped you, and Connor Bedard didn't. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, no, and I think I think the point of, if you have this big of a problem with it,
handle it like a man.
Call him, send him a text or see him sometime after the game or something like that, and talk about it that way. I think is one thing to go about it. I think it's to have the reception that he did following being nominated or being inducted into the Hall of Fame, coming back to Chicago, being back in the spotlight within the Blackhawks sphere, having the night where you honor his induction to the Hall of Fame. He talked about having a different perspective over these years.
I said it tonight. It sounds like he's been humbled.
Yeah, being humbled by kind of having to wait on the Hall of Fame and all that, and wanting to. I can't remember the specific quote when he did the Q&A with Troy Murray, but he talked about like wanting to be around the Blackhawks more and be able to, kind of be in that spot again, and knowing what he has to kind of do to be able to have that spot, and the privilege it is to be in that kind of role with the Blackhawks, and then 2 weeks later to kind of put on blast the face of the franchise. It's quite the choice, and I think it's over something like this is extremely just disappointing to see from a guy who seemed like he knew how much he had kind of screwed some things up in his relationships in the past with the organization, and you could say that some of it is on the organization too. Fine, but it's not that Roenick is without fault, and then to come back with this situation, it puts you back in that spot. And I feel like you probably hit it the best of the way that this all feels with Roenick once again, is that it is a predictable situation.
Well, Lord Hosta says it right. He says, how easy it would have been for Roenick to just call Connor and say, hey, Connor, I didn't get a chance to say hi at the Winter Classic. How's it going? Are we good? That's it.
Sure.
That's how you handle something like this.
And you can even bring up to the point of like, I felt this way because you didn't say hi to me and blah, 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 and respect the game and all those points that he felt like he had to make. You can bring that up to Connor. And Bedard is a guy that, it's not just like he's flippantly playing hockey just because he's good at it. Like he is very ingrained in the sport,
life.
And it's knowing the NHL is a big part of it. So did he ever see Jeremy Roenick play live with any significance in his life? I would think not. He was born in 2005.
Yeah, Roenick was retired by then, wasn't he?
He was retired by 2009, I think it was. But I'm sure he still knows who Jeremy Roenick is.
Of course he does.
It's not that it's not that it. I don't think it was a calculated snub.
08-09 was his last year.
Roenick, Chelios, Savard. Like Chelios and Savard have been around the team. He knows he has a relationship with those guys. I just don't think that this is a singular instance that was calculated by Bedard to be like, I'm going to snub Jeremy Roenick. Like, I don't think that's.
Well, I think, and Deadhawk kind of hits the nail on the head here and says, write down a little bit there, sir. It gets a lot more podcast listens when you blast the face of the future of the league, though. That's true. This is a lot. This has gotten his podcast and Tim Peel's podcast a lot more recognition and notice than it's been getting lately. And those guys, from knowing both of them, not personally, but knowing of their histories, went into the creation of that podcast saying, we're going to be controversial. We're going to get headlines. It's how those guys both operate. It is about getting a reaction. And that's what made Jeremy a really good player. Not only was he great at pissing you off as an opponent, then he'd put 4 points on you that night too, right, to add to the frustration. But that's the personality. The personality is agitator, crapster, all those things with immaculate, amazing talent. And it does seem a little calculated, because if we want to talk about hockey code and this thing that all these old school players talk about, not confronting a guy face to face about it is about as anti-hockey code as you get. Right?
That's fair.
And again, he could reach out to anyone in the organization and say, hey, I want to get a note to Connor. How can I do that? Sure, we're happy to pass it on for you, JR.
Sure,
what do you want to say? Or here's his number.
Yeah.
And say, hey, man, like, I just want to make sure we're good. And I'm sure Connor Brower would say, yeah, what do you mean?
New number, who this?
I mean, no, but I think we've all been there where, like, it just happened with me and Steven. I was talking to Steven, like, the Bears show went late. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess we'll just go screw ourselves. You guys got. And he came and he's like, hey, man, I understand you're upset, but it was a long. I go, I am absolutely kidding. But if Steven hadn't come to me in the kitchen, he would have thought I was legitimately mad. I was just totally kidding with him.
Oh, that's funny.
But he thought I was upset, and he came to me and said, hey, man, I get we were late. I'm sorry, but here's why it was a big day. And I'm like, whoa. There's nothing there. I'm totally joking with you.
That's funny.
So it happens.
Yeah.
It's emotional intelligence.
That's right. Emotional intelligence.
And
And Steven, very emotionally intelligent, came up to me, because we're good, and asked me, hey, is everything cool? I'm like, yeah, dude, I was totally joking. Sorry if it didn't come across that way. And it's over.
Yep.
That's how you handle something like that, because 99.9% of the time, it's a big nothing burger.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
We're going to wrap things up. Want to remind you.
Super chats we didn't get to?
We're going to do some. I got to hit the read, though, before the, bottom of the hour.
Oh, one from Colin.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Gotcha.
But
We'll
become a
get you.
diehard at allchgo.com today. We would appreciate that. You get access to all of our great written content, a free shirt or hat upon sign up, or $35 off a hoodie. 20% off all of our events, takeovers, watch parties, all that great stuff. So many reasons to become a diehard. And most importantly, it supports us. It supports all the work we do. Mario, me, all of the Bulls, Cubs, Sox, everybody. We're all doing it. You get access to all of it. So do it. Jump on it. Allchgo.com is the place to go. We're really looking forward to our takeover January 20th against Carolina in the suite. The Bulls just had their suite night when Derrick Rose was honored by the Bulls and they beat the Knicks.
Nice.
Our takeovers, man, we got a good winning percentage.
Sure, yeah.
For two teams that don't have a good winning percentage.
Without doing the math on it, yes. I think we do have a good winning percentage on takeovers.
So join us at our next one. You don't have to be a diehard to come to our takeovers, but you save 20%.
Yeah.
And for our takeover in the suite, that was $80 per ticket.
Nice.
Which is, oddly enough, precisely what a diehard membership costs. So scan that QR code on your screen or go to allchgo.com for more info there. All right, let's get these super chats before we wrap things up. Colin says, thoughts on Tab's article on Seth Jones being off the penalty kill. I will confess, I did not read it. I did see it. I love Tab. See Tab every day. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Seth Jones is going to play all the time.
Yeah, I think he's a minutes eating guy. You still task him with a lot of responsibilities. Given the way that he's played recently, though, I'm all open to the idea that Anders Sorensen has said regarding Lucas Reichel, Philip Kurashev, Arvid Soderblom in recent weeks regarding playing time. I'm all for it being merit-based. And in recent games, since Seth Jones has come back from his injury, he hasn't been great. And I'm fine with going with who is playing well in different responsibilities. So if taking some of that responsibility load off of Jones, if he's not on the penalty kill, can allow him to be more effective, be a little bit more fresh for the minutes that he is playing at 5-on-5 and on the power play, I'm fine with it. So if that is something that is on the table, I think anything with this lineup and this roster should be on the table given the way that they've played. I would be fine with it. I wouldn't hate the idea of a different look. If you try it and it doesn't work, you go back to it.
Sure. It's, they tried it earlier in the year in the power play. They put Alex Vlasic on power play 1 and took Jones off for a while, and it worked for a while. Then it didn't. They went right back to it. Look, we have preached all year, and especially if you listen to our last postgame show, about how there should be an equal meritocracy for everybody. So it shouldn't just be the kids who are punished for playing poorly. It should be the veterans too. Right. So maybe a punishment isn't being scratched, but lack of power play time, lack of penalty kill time. Sure. So if the film review turns out that Seth Jones is being detrimental to the penalty kill, by all means, I'm here for it. 100%. All right, and one more, $5 from our pal Windy City Hockey. Says JR was fired by NBC for being an idiot for what he said on a podcast, and Tim Peel was fired by the NHL for his hot mic of having to even out the penalties. Yep, that's what happened. That's what happened. Those are the facts. So I hope that Jeremy takes the criticism he's been getting, because it's been pretty much universal. I've seen a couple here and there.
There is a portion of hockey fans that would say, like, yeah, Bedard was in the wrong, but I think
there's also a portion of hockey fans that say Connor Bedard's a bust.
Right? Yeah, they might run parallel.
That Venn diagram might be a circle.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely I think this is a situation that didn't need to be public, because it probably doesn't merit that much like thought and oxygen, but it does just kind of, again, it ruffles the relationship that seemingly was starting to mend between Roenick and the Blackhawks.
Well, and that was the point I was trying to make, was maybe he hears this feedback from people and sees, oh, I was wrong.
Right.
Connor, I'm sorry. Maybe it's public, maybe it's private. Either is fine. Again, emotional maturity, as Sarah talked about.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And if you can't say, you know what, I was frustrated and I didn't think it through, and now that I've had some time to reflect, I'm sorry I put you through that. My bad. I hope we're good. Connor doesn't have to forgive him. He doesn't have to talk about it. But that's emotional maturity, is admitting when you're wrong. So hopefully a lesson can be learned here for Jeremy. And those lessons keep coming. Because I'd really like to see my favorite player's number hanging up there forever if he could just get out of his own damn way. All right.
Agreed.
We ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Back tomorrow night postgame. By the way, if you're going to the game, Hawks and Avs, 6:30 puck drop.
Another nationally televised game.
Woo-hoo. What could possibly go wrong?
We'll find out.
Yeah. 6:30 puck drop tomorrow. We'll be on postgame, as always, after the Hawks and Avs wrap it up right here on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.